He was just always give more than 100%. He had the forms for the Army, and he said, Dad, can you sign these forms? And
Mm.
his dad said no. And they were like, hey, why don't we do 82nd Airborne? We can get our Ranger tabs through there still. I remember hearing about a flag that you can display out your window, and I grabbed one, and it was a gold star. And he's all, put that down, Mom.
Mm.
I said, what do you mean put that down? It's a gold star. He's
Mm.
like, you don't want that flag, Mom.
Hey, it's Lou Pimber, author of the book Breaking Badly, a post-traumatic success story. I'm so thankful for the reviews on Amazon. So if you have written one, thank you so much. If you read the book, thank you so much. It's about coming back from a life post law enforcement, living a very dangerous lifestyle and career, and I'm very thankful for it. Today I am honored to have with me a very special guest, mother of Specialist Chris Moon, U.S. Army, 82nd Airborne soldier, and we have Miss Marsha Moon. I'll have Marsha share her story and talk about her dear son, who unfortunately passed away back in, I believe it was 2010. And Miss Marsha, thank you for being here with us today. Mrs. Moon, tell us a little bit about your son. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Again, thank you, Miss Moon.
Yes, good to be here. Thank you, Lou. And just for those of you that know, we went to high school together. So who knew that our circle, which is kind of reconnect again. So my son, Christopher Moon, later to become a specialist with the 82nd Airborne and was a sniper with the HHC reconnaissance there out in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. So I have two kids. I have Christopher, who was the oldest, and I have a daughter, Sunday Moon, and who now has given me three grandchildren. Growing up, both my kids were athletic. You know, we kind of kept them involved in sports. They did BMX, they did swimming, they did soccer, and Chris kind of took on baseball at around, seriously, at around 11 years old, you know, joined club teams. And he wasn't really a standout. He was just, you know, I give a lot of credit of that to my husband because he spent a lot of time teaching him and working with him and even giving him the, you know, you're only as good as what you put in, you know, kind of.
Mm.
My husband gave him a lot of great advice and a lot of you know, you win some, you lose some, but you got to keep your mentality, you know, in check with it. So I do give a lot of praise to my husband for that. And with both kids, again, you know, they were very good at sports. Chris, on the other hand, you know, had kind of that right mentality, and he was just a gifted athlete. And I know as a young kid, Chris always was that kid that was playing with his army men in the backyard, and
Yeah.
then he had his BB gun. He would pretend that he was a sniper, and that was something that he did say. He said, one day I'm going to become a sniper. And so fast forward to high school, you know, my husband's done coaching him and whatnot. Chris kind of just, this is all Chris and all the knowledge that he gained through baseball. I don't think we would have ever thought that it would have been that big, you know. Honestly, Chris is, you meet him, he's very humble. He's very, he loves talking. He's a good listener. And I know, you know, as parents, you want to raise your kids with good morals, good values. And I think another thing that my husband told him was, you carry our Moon legacy. Anything and everything you do is a representation of us. And I know with Chris, that really stuck. And so I want to say that he was more like me. I'm a social person. I like to interact with people. And I think Chris kind of took that on. And I would, I guess you can say as a mother, being very proud of his service to country, and we'll get to that. But just the stories that come back and to hear how my son represented himself. I mean, yeah, he did us very well, and we're very proud of that. So Chris obviously succeeded and did very well through high school. Very humble again. He's not was not a showmanship. He wasn't like, oh, did you see that? And did you do that? He was just always give more than 100%. And according to the Atlanta Braves scout who was scouting him, and there were others, he just said this guy had a really good head on his shoulders, and you could see he never was angry. He always gave 100, more than 100%. He was always lifting his team, no matter what, whether it was a win or a loss, and just really was, intrigued with him. And so once Chris graduated from high school, he was 17 years old, still had the Army. He would always tell us, I think mainly me, because we had a really good connection relationship. He would always say, Mom, I talked to a recruit. I talked to a recruit. I said, why are you doing that to me? And Chris was a joker too.
Yeah.
He had a good head on his shoulders. He was happy all the time.
Let me ask you
Everybody
something.
always,
Let me ask you something
yes.
before we get into the military stuff. As a kid, Chris growing up, what were some of his favorite things to do besides playing baseball and play military in the backyard?
Well, he did like riding bikes. So we
Okay.
did, yeah. So he was BMX. I mean, he was, we did I mean, we obviously baseball consumed us, but when we
Yes.
did it, he loved camping.
Mm,
He liked going out on the Jeep rides and hunting and whatnot with his father. I
got
mean,
it.
so those were some of the things that he liked doing. And he loved just hanging out in the neighborhood with his friends.
As a baseball player, what position did he play, by the way?
Chris was that utility kid.
Hmm.
He was on second base. He was definitely a pitcher. He
Yeah,
was on second base. He was shortstop sometimes, through the club teams, and then he was playing outfield. But when it all came down to it, his favorite thing was playing center field. Everybody
center
says
field.
he didn't like pitching. He liked it, but his favorite thing was center field.
Yeah, yeah, kind of like a defender in the back, right? That's awesome.
Yeah,
And so you
yeah,
mentioned he was being prospected by the Atlanta Braves. Tell me about that a little bit.
yes. Yeah. So, this was something new for us. We didn't know all the ins and outs. And then, of course, we would hear from the coach, oh, yeah, just so you know, there's the Atlantic Scout there. These
Hmm.
guys that do baseball all the time, they know who's who. Well, we were just newbies coming into this. We knew nothing about this. So this
Yeah.
was all new to us. And so we try again, I try not to, I don't even remember Chris ever saying, "Hey, Mom, I've got the Atlanta Brave Scouts watching me." Never, never would he ever say that,
Mm,
And I was there for most of his practices. Even I had been there through Little League and growing up, and I was there for most of his high school practices, and I never missed a game until it came down to the last game. Every family goes through their family problems and issues, and I had one going on, that was going on with my daughter. And I think up into that last championship game in his high school, I remember saying, I'm not missing this game. And I have been there that whole time. And
wow.
this will show you how amazing Chris was. So I told my husband, I said, I'm going, I don't care. And my daughter, we were going through a situation there, and she comes running out because she was, obviously grounded. And she knew how important this game was. And she was like, Mom, she goes, I want to go with you. And I was like, wow, she's talking to me. Okay.
So
And
hang
I'm
on,
like,
hang on,
okay.
hang on, because your daughter's kids are probably gonna watch this, okay? So she was.
I
Can you
know.
tell us what she was grounded for? Can you a little bit or no?
No, I'd rather leave that part out. But I
Okay,
mean,
so
but it
she
was,
was grounded and she
yes,
showed up to the
yes.
game. Okay, go ahead.
She knew how serious this was. So I just told her, I said,
Awesome.
you are to stay next to me and you are not to talk to anybody. And then as soon as the game is done, we are leaving. And of course, that was the game against Mesa. And that's that in the newspaper, they had taken a picture because it was a close game. And of course, Chris hits the winning home run game
Mhm.
to win that game. And you see him air and then stomping on home base, and it's in the
Wow.
paper. And as much as I wish I could have stayed for that, I was like, I need to show my daughter, because I'm like a stickler, I'm strict. And I said,
Right.
okay, we are getting up and going, and we left. So as I'm driving home, Chris calls, and I see it's him. And he's like, Mom, thank you so much for coming to the game. He goes, that meant more than anything. And of course, I'm crying and I'm like, oh my God. I said, I'm so proud of you, son. I said, I cannot believe it. I said, I love you and I'll see you at. And then, of course, my daughter knew how important that was. And I think things from then on kind of smoothed out between us and between me and my daughter. And just I think the realization of how important that moment was. And then when I look at that newspaper, I'm taken back to that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let me so that game was in Mesa?
That game was here in Tucson
In
and Phoenix
Tucson.
had come down.
Okay,
Yes, it was at
wow, wow,
the,
wow.
yeah,
And was
the
that was a high
old,
school game? Was that was
that
a
was a high school game.
yeah.
Yes.
Was it like a state playoff game or divisional game?
Yes, it was for the state playoff game. Yes. Well, actually, no. It was to go on to Phoenix and then for the state playoffs.
I
So yeah.
see. Wow. Okay. So at which point did you realize, okay, Chris is serious about this military thing? He's not joking around. And how did that conversation go?
So okay. So we are going through his senior year. He didn't mention it at all, but I think things were just moving way too fast. Again, he's 17 years old. All the guys on his team are a year older. I know the you know just I'm sure there's a lot of pressure. You have a lot of things to decide at
Hmm.
that moment. 17 years old, he's a 6'2" guy. You wouldn't think, and obviously, really, he's still a kid. and and my heart was I really wanted him just do whatever was kind of easy, but I also wanted him, hey, Atlanta Braves, you're not going to get that opportunity again.
Yeah.
But it wasn't up to us. We weren't going to make that decision for him. He was
Mm.
going to make that decision.
What did
So,
say? What was Dad's thought on that?
well, so as he once he graduated, he had the forms for the army and he said, Dad, can you sign these forms? And
Mm.
his dad said no.
Mm.
He says, you have all these opportunities. He goes, I will not, I'm not going to sign this form. So Chris made his decision. He was able to sign with the University of Arizona.
Nice.
He also was able to sign with a junior college. I think that's what you can do. So he
Hmm.
signed with Pima Community College as well. He goes in, and again, he's still young. I think he's still young when he goes into college, and it's overwhelming because there's a lot that's required of you.
Hmm.
And I know that when he went into that first semester, obviously, he's having his tutoring, he's got that all going, and he makes the 9-man roster. And for the first time, I don't think Andy Lopez has ever done it with a player, but he had him pitching and
Hmm.
playing outfield.
Hmm.
And of course, Chris wasn't able to, he was going to have him on the team, but he had told Chris he was going to be on the left field, not center field, because this is his senior year. And then Chris will be placed in that position. And I don't think Chris was hurt by it, but we got to see him do a first scrimmage game, which was neat. And he did pitching and outfielding, which was a surprise to us. Um, but I just think that Chris, like I said, once he had asked his dad to sign, I think he was just waiting to turn 18.
Mm.
And then from what we found out was he just didn't just drop everything and leave. He actually talked to Coach Lopez. He actually talked to all his baseball mentors, his club team coach from, when he was 12 years old, because they were good
Yeah.
friends, and his high school coach. And they all said the same thing. Why? You have all these opportunities. And his answer was, I can always come back to this. He goes, but I want to do what I've been wanting to do. And
Mm.
and I think at that moment when Chris sat us down and said that, his dad was like, Chris, you lived our dreams up until now, and now it's your turn to figure out, what that next move is for you, and if that's what you want to do.
Dad said that to him.
Yes,
Wow.
yes,
I think, most men entering that warrior phase of their life they don't know they're entering that warrior phase of their life, but something inside them, something instinctual, as they're entering that warrior phase of their life, are seeking some way to become initiated, you know?
Yeah.
And that was probably Chris. He was seeking a way to become initiated to earn that title of being a man. And
Yeah.
that initiation often comes through hardship, through a military type environment, you know, and so that was in Chris, you know, and you know, to his credit, he wasn't afraid to face that because there's a
Yeah.
lot of men today who are too afraid of, who are uninitiated men, who are grown
Yeah.
men but are still children. And Chris wanted to go through that initiation process, you know.
Yeah. And also to say too, he was affected by 9/11. I mean,
Mm.
that I have no doubt.
So what year was
Um,
this then?
so he was probably only 11 years old. What, back in 2001 is when
Okay.
9/11 happened. And he was young, but it was enough to affect him because believe me, I would, find doodle drawings of him drawing Saddam Hussein and all these army, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
drawings of them. And so, it was very well on his mind.
Yeah.
And
It was in his heart to go and and
uh,
and, and serve. Wow. Okay. Got it. Got it. So what happened? He went off to basic training out of to where did he go? Is it one unit
he
station
went
training?
to Fort Benning, so he was able to be sent to Fort Benning's. He did his training through that.
Okay.
Of course, someone with his athleticism, definitely goes noticed.
Yep.
They had asked him to be one of the leaders on that. And again, as humble as Chris is, he shoots it down because he says, no, I want to be here with the men. I want to be able to make sure that all my men are grouped together. He didn't want to take the lead, although there was some moments where because it's so nice when they can write letters.
Yep.
um I know some nights he had to be on watch with some of the guys that were there, and they were on like suicide watch or
Fire
what,
watch.
I don't know.
Fire watch.
Yes, exactly. And so they would always choose him to do that. So, there was interesting things. And but I mean, for the most part, I think what he says is all the guys that are like serious about it, they are all together. Like they
Good.
talk to each other and they say, hey, what are you in for? What are you doing? What do you? And so they kind of collaborate and say, and I know Chris wanted Rangers.
Mm.
And then we had a ranger friend from church, uh, Martin Barreras, who we are a good relationship with the family. And so we let them know that Chris was interested in that. So he took it upon himself to come and find Chris and
Okay.
talk with him and said, yeah, we'll make it happen. And so Chris finishes basic training, and then so he wants to go Rangers, and then all of a sudden he puts in his orders, and it's a 6 month wait. And he's
Mm.
like, I'm not gonna sit here for 6 months and just wait and just do what they want me to do here on grounds. He goes, so the guys collaborate again, and they were like, hey, why don't we do 82nd Airborne? We can get our Ranger tabs through there still. And so they quickly, it wasn't even long, maybe about a month, and then they were off to 82nd Airborne, and then went that route. Chris ended up out of 2508, and then the Charlie Company there, and guys in the Charlie Company. And it's funny, and I'll share this with his sniper buddy who came out of Charlie Company with Chris. He just said that he was pretty much, the guy like who was leading that Charlie Company and was a fast runner. And he says all of a sudden this 6'2" guy comes in, and he's like, he's not going to make it. Look at that guy take off.
Yeah.
So we laugh about this. He's like, look at this guy. He's going to take off. He's going to putter out. All of a sudden he says he runs the whole thing. He can't find him anywhere. And he's
Yeah.
like, he's all casually sitting back in his room playing his video game.
Oh wow. That was
And he
his
was just,
that was his in him. He just had that strong genes to run. Wow.
yeah, yeah. And so, and again, it didn't last very long in Charlie Company and reconnaissance. They said, hey, we've got a guy who would fit in that reconnaissance. And so sure enough, I remember Chris calling me and saying, Mom, hey, I'm going to go reconnaissance, because if I go reconnaissance, I can go sniper.
Mm.
And I'm like, he goes, I can become a sniper. And I was like, I said, wow. I said, so fast. I mean,
Right.
everything was moving just so fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sure enough, they did. They sent him to sniper school. Um, and again, I didn't find out till much, much later. Chris, actually, Chris, the first time he did his training, um, he actually failed in one of his physical tests. And so I guess they give you only so many tries you have to pass. He
Mm-hmm.
passed everything else, no problem. But the thing I find out is he failed on his sit-ups.
Mm.
And so what he did was, the next time he was going to do that test, he was going to pass it with flying colors. And that's exactly what he did. He was like, I am not letting this sit-up thing, you know. But anyway, so once
You
it
know,
came
that
down to
type of
the,
stuff happens sometimes when you're in training, and it does get you sometimes. You're either having a off day or you're fatigued or whatever, and it
yeah,
does happen. I remember almost failing a PT test because I had a fever, and so the run actually healed me. I sweated it all out, and I felt better. But good, he responded good to a moment of failure, so that says a lot about him. Says a lot about him.
yes. And I didn't find out till later that he actually got a perfect 4.0 stock test and in record time.
Nice.
And yeah, so those things I didn't find out till later. And again, that's something Chris just doesn't, he just doesn't talk about himself like that.
Right. He just does it.
Um, yes,
Yeah, he
yes.
just does it. So, and then he gets to how soon after that was he deployed to the combat zone?
So once he completed that, I know that he was already, so you're saying that, so he went in 2008 of February to, was sent to basic training. And
Hmm.
then it wasn't long after 208, then obviously he was with 82nd Airborne, I would say probably by, oh gosh, was it sometime in the summer of
Okay.
2008, went to 82nd. And then after that, then 82nd, yeah, he was being sent out in August of 2009.
In that
So
time, were you in communication with him?
yes, always. Back then it was Skype. So
Oh yeah.
we were on Skype all the time when he was able to. So it's nice because all the times that I remember Skyping him, I could just see the rear window of his window and the reflection, and you could see his door. So, small.
Yeah.
He was saying, "Oh, my bed's on this side, my bathroom's on this side." He would just say that. And he somehow got in a two bedroom. So he had two bedrooms and
Yeah.
a bathroom. And so I could see the guys peeking through. I could always hear the guys, "Hey, Moon, are you ready? Shut up. I'm talking to my mom." And then they come back again. They're
Yeah.
all, "Damn, he's still talking to his mom." And it's like, so,
That's
and I look
awesome.
back at those Skypes and I wish it would have recorded us,
Uh,
face, conversation, everything, because
yeah.
a lot of it was 55 minutes, it went over an hour. That's
Wow.
just, that's just how often we were able to talk. And
Wow. What
yeah,
what what uh, what did he talk to you about? What did he share with you?
he always wanted to know, well, first of all, when he left for deployment, my daughter had a baby,
Mm.
and he got to see her just quickly, and he could not wait to come back now and see her. And so every time we Skyped, he's like, "Is Samira there? Is Samira there?" And so we would put her up there, and he would do his little cute babble talk and say,
Yeah.
"Samira, Samira, this is your Uncle Chris,"
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And it just, I mean, we talk about what's going on here. He tell me what's going on there, not so much in detail, and then of course how crazy the place was.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he loved the training. He definitely loved the training, no doubt about that. Um,
And, and
so
and so how soon after that was it when he was injured in combat?
so they left for deployment. So actually me and my husband went down to surprise him and do a visit before his deployment.
Okay.
And so we did that, and Chris took us all around 82nd Airborne, and then they also have the Special Forces there on
Hmm.
Fort Bragg as well. So we went to both, and I remember walking into the 82nd Airborne Museum and we were looking at flags. And I remember hearing about a flag that you can display out your window. And I grabbed one and it was a gold star. And he's all, put that down, Mom.
Mm,
I said, what do you mean, put that down? It's a gold star. He's
mm,
like, you don't want that flag, Mom. And I'm like,
hmm,
what do you mean?
hmm,
So it was amazing that my son knew what a gold star flag was.
hmm,
And I can tell you there's probably a good percentage of military men when they're in there that they don't know what that Gold Star flag is.
hmm,
So 82nd Airborne does a really good job in making sure those men know their history and they teach them the history along,
hmm.
so I know Chris was just absorbing all that and and I know because he loves that stuff. Um,
So he was in
so
his
we went
element.
to yeah, and so we also got to go to the special forces, which was really neat to see. And he was just excited just to show us the area, and you can just see that he was beaming with pride,
Yeah, yeah.
in showing us all that. So once we did that, we went back home, and then he surprised us with a quick visit. I
Oh,
think he
okay.
wanted. I said, "Are you sure you want to see me, or you just want to see your friends?" He's all both, Mom,
Yes.
both. And so anyway, so it was a quick visit, and when he left, and this was one of my old phones, photos were not that great back then on those phones in 2009 like it is now. But I remember he left me a lengthy message when he was flying back home, and I don't have that message. I wish I would have
Mm,
recorded that message because he was just so generous and humble that he was like, Mom, he goes, I can't say thank you enough for raising me, for I'm so glad I got to see you all in the family. He goes, especially Samira. He goes, I'll be thinking of you guys all the time. He goes, just pray for me. And that was his thing. And he goes, but I'll be in contact. He's like, I'll be in
yeah,
contact when I
yeah.
can. He goes,
So
but it was
what
just thank you for raising me.
did he grow up going to church at all, or was
Yes, we did. I grew up in a Christian family, both mainly on my mom's side. My dad didn't start coming to church till later. But yeah, my mom had enormous faith. I've seen her go through two losses of children.
hmm.
Um, and she was definitely you know, had enormous faith. And so through her church, I know once I had children, I was like, what do I do? I need to do something with them. And I was able to I knew people were putting their kids in preschools. And so there were quite a few Christian preschool I believe it or not, on the south side. And so I found one called Chapel in the Hills. And it ended up being that Chris went there the 1 year and I was working and I was trying to shuffle and it just was too much. And then I'd have to take my daughter when she was
Yeah.
little, I'd have to take her to a like a daycare.
You know,
And my husband
good.
was like, you know what? He goes, we're gonna make a sacrifice. He goes, I just need you to be at home with them and take them to preschool and pick them up. And so we made that sacrifice. And I think I even volunteered, there at the preschool.
Yeah.
And they were like, you have a natural gift at this. Is this something you would want to do? And so I put my application in, and the next year I was in a teacher's assistant.
Oh, wow.
And yeah,
There's something about a boy who's raised in a church, you know what I mean, and with faith in his heart, because
yeah,
it's part of the phase of becoming a warrior as well as a young man. Because if you read the scripture, there's a lot of talk about warriors. Of course, you have David, you have all
yes,
these men who fought, right? And so
yeah,
it's not surprising that Chris would want to grow up, be a soldier, grow up to be a sniper, a paratrooper. You know what I mean? It's not surprising, and that's
yeah.
just that's a reflection of good parenting as well, a good father, a good mother, a good surrounding. Uh, um, take me to the time when on his last deployment. Were you aware he was on deployment? Had you spoken to him before that?
Yeah. So Chris, okay, so I kind of had to talk to his sniper buddy to kind of get an idea because, I know when I would talk to Chris, he would always say, like at one area, he was in Helmand Province at the beginning of his deployment. So
Mm-hmm.
he was with the British, he was with Marines, he was mixed in.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that he was there for a good chunk of time up until October of 2009. And then I know they transitioned again. And he said they were going to be moving and they were, I believe it was to this to where he was at the end of his deployment, but I don't think he was. He was someplace else. It wasn't until March of 2010 that he ended up in the place where he was going to stay until the to where he had passed or where he was injured. So I know from March of 2010 all the way to obviously July 13th of 2010, he was in the Rabdag, or if I'm saying that right, Arghandab. Is it
Organdov, okay.
Arghandab Valley? And I remember him saying even before that they were transitioning to Kandahar. So I know he was in Kandahar area for a while, and then, like I said, at the end of his deployment was in that Arghandab area.
Mm.
And through our conversations, my work, at that time I was a first grade teacher, and my work had allowed me to have an assistant just in case Chris called, because Chris would call
Mm.
in the morning and it was later in the evening there. And
Mm-hmm.
so I would receive a call maybe, and then we would be able to talk for at least a good 30 minutes, sometimes, shorter than that. But he would always say, Mom, he goes, I'll hear from you in a month. He goes, I am out in the hills. We are out, what snipers do, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
know all the details of that because
Mm-hmm.
um he wasn't able to share a lot of
Yeah.
that. But every conversation we had, he always wanted to know what foods we ate, or he would pretend that his MREs were a Los Nopales burrito, or or Little Mexico, or he would
Yeah.
always pretend.
Yeah.
Um, and then I know that I got good at sending him packages, and because he was in a remote location, it wasn't like they got packages right away. It
Right.
took much longer. So I got smart at doing that. And then he said, just buy for the company because we just all share. He goes, we
Mm.
don't, everybody just, and so I started doing that as well. Um, always wanted protein shakes. He says, don't send any candy, we get a lot of candy here, he goes. um but so yeah, so kind of that. And then comes July, and I know he had sent me at the middle of June. Well, first of all, they had lost some guys, and some really key guys that Chris was, obviously in the company. It hits you, you know
Yep.
I don't think these guys didn't even have time to even grieve or mourn. They can't, because you got to be mentally sound and there
Correct.
and ready. So he had just lost a key sergeant platoon guy that was really well known. And I
Mm.
remember the call that when he had called. And so that happened in June. And then here we are at the end of June. That's a week before he was injured. Um, he had called and he's like, Mom, he goes, and I can already hear the quiver in his voice. And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
Mom, he goes, I'm not going to lie to you. He goes, I'm being shot at every day.
Mm.
And then he had sent me a footage from MSNBC of the area, because they did have a photojournalist out there with him.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was able to send some video back, and he wanted me to see what was going on. And they were pretty much in a battle every day. And of course, I didn't know what else to say. I froze and I said, your dad's right here. And I took the phone and I threw it at my husband.
Right.
And I ran to my room and I just fell on my hands and knees and I just prayed. I said, Lord, I know I offered him to you. I offered him to you, but I want him home. I want him back. And I said, and I know he's in your hands. And I just pray that he comes back.
Yeah.
And I just know that I'm not angry at God. I had to take a step back and say my loss is not the only loss. Loss happens right now as we're speaking. Death is all over the world.
Right.
And I had to I had to just kind of put that in my mind and say, I want him here, but it's not, God knows our time. He knows everything about us. And I had to just really put my faith into it. So I think me and my husband said, you know what? Our faith is going to be at the forefront of this. And I can tell you, Lou, when I look back at everything, you see that saying with the footprints in the sand. That's exactly how it was. God just carried us through that whole thing. He placed the right people in our path, godly people. And it was amazing to see. And then I think, and what I share with everybody, because I have people come up, how do you do it? I look at them, I said, do you really want to know? And they're like, yeah. And I said, it's because of my faith in Jesus Christ. I said, I could not do this alone. And he is, I said, plus I know where my son is. God truly affirmed that for us. He let us know where Chris is through
Wow.
all these little miraculous things that just kind of happened throughout when we were saying goodbye to Chris.
Mm, mm. So tell me, if you could, the when you got the phone call that he was injured, did he call you that he was injured, or someone else?
No. So what happened was, okay, so we had just gotten back. We spent for me and my husband and my sister and I took our granddaughter on a trip, and we had just gotten back from uh the White Mountains. And so it was July 5th. So we were home, and all of a sudden we had ironwork being done on our front door, and all of a sudden I see the sheriff coming up, and I'm thinking, oh, crap. I'm like, the HOA, call the police. Oh, we did not submit anything. The HOA's sending the sheriff on us. That's exactly what I thought. So all of a sudden the sheriff comes over, and he comes through, and he's like, hi, I'm looking for Brian and Marsha Moon. And I'm
Hmm.
like, yes, I'm Marsha Moon. And he goes, well, I'm here to deliver a message from the Army. The Army's been trying to get a hold of you. And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, okay.
Hmm.
And he's like, here's the card. He goes, are you able to call? And I'm frozen. And I'm like, okay, it's not the military man. He's not
Right,
dead.
right.
And I'm thinking, and I'm just frozen. I'm like, come on, think, Marsha. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, okay. I said, I can't make the call. And he looks at me like, I said, oh my gosh. I said, he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, no. I'm like trying to prevent myself from fainting, because you like feel like that the life is being sucked out of you at that moment, because then I know my baby's hurt. And I'm like, I'm here, and I cannot do anything. And so I am just standing there, and I'm like, and he's like, how can I help you? I said, I need water, because my mouth became so dry. I was trying to prevent from fainting, and I'm trying not to breathe too fast. And he's like, I said, find me a bag or something. And then I finally, he got the water, and I sat down, and he found a bag, and I was just trying to breathe. And he's like, ma'am, he goes, I take it your husband's at work. And I said, yes, he is. And he says, do you need me to call him? I said, yes, please. And so he called Brian, and sure enough, Brian, he explained who he was and why he was there.
Who was
And
the
he
deputy? Did
first
you call
thing,
his name?
what's that? I
Who
don't
was
remember his
Hmm.
name. No. And so he was talking to my husband, and immediately my husband was like, is my wife okay? And he says no. And he says, does she need me to come home? And I'm like looking, I'm like, yes. And so that was the extent of that. And I know my husband had made that call. He didn't quite share it with me, but he said, yes, our boy's injured. And he goes,
Hmm.
but we will be having the he made it to Bagram, and from Bagram they are flying him to Landstuhl, Germany. And they were like, so I was like, okay, so he's in air, he's moving. Okay, that's all I know, but
Good.
he's injured bad. So that's the extent of what we knew. And then I know from then on, I did not want to listen to the doctor. I did not want to hear any of that. I let my husband do that. And finally, I think it was like so that was July 5th. All that happened on July 5th of 2010. Then my husband hears from the doctor, not every night, but like every 2 nights. And then there was one point I think it was like maybe 4 days after they were talking about possibly he was going to make it to Walter Reed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking in my mind, okay, I need to be ready and available. I need to be in sound mind. I need to be strong for my boy because, up to that point, you're not eating. You're not even thinking about that. You're
Right.
just like, why are they not sending me, to Germany right away? Come on.
Yeah.
So like I said, they had thought that he was going to go to Walter Reed. And I think because of, there's always this, I think before death, they always say there's this bringing back of life, like it looks like they're sound and then they pass.
That
So
has.
within that night, that phone call that they had told us that within that night, things just went for a turn. So Chris did die of blood poisoning from the IED, and that was remote detonated by one of the, obviously the Taliban. They knew who Chris was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Chris had many Taliban kills, and so
Mm-hmm.
they knew who Chris was.
Mm-hmm.
Chris did not have to go and walk out on that last walk that he was,
Mm-hmm.
because they were transitioning over to the 101st Airborne that was coming in, and so
Mm-hmm.
they were trying to train these guys. And again, Chris did not have to go, but my son, he's not going to say no.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any of you guys would say no
Right.
because these are your men.
Right.
And so yeah, so he made it to out of Lawrenceville. Finally, I think from that last phone call to when they said, he was going to make it, we get another immediate call and they're like, we're flying you guys out. We're going to get you guys over here. We woke him up and we woke him up and he didn't know where he was. So he had blasted eardrums. He had severe laceration on his right arm, lost a thumb. When they got him, his left leg was blasted like mid calf, and then the right leg was blasted just a little above his right leg was blasted a little bit above his right knee, and they had to keep amputating because of the I guess the blood poisoning.
Mm-hmm.
And so his right leg ended up way out. They basically just took his whole hip, the whole leg out, and then his left leg they kept amputating above his right knee. And yeah, and it was just, I think they said they gave him like 144 bags of blood.
Wow.
He was fighting. He was fighting. And through that whole thing, my prayer was, Lord, if he wants to go home, take him. Or if he wants to fight and he knows what he looks like, let him fight. So my prayer was both ways. I was like, I know I'll see him again, but if he wants to fight, it's not up to me, it's up to him,
Yeah.
what he wants to do. And
It's been that happened in 2010, right?
yes,
So it
yes.
was it July. I have the shirt
Yeah,
that
we
you guys
just
made
had
the shirt
another anniversary. Yes, yes.
commemorating Chris Moon right here. It says airborne all the way specialist Christopher J. Moon, Moondog, born August 3rd, 89, died July 13th, 2010.
Yes.
All right. Oh, what about Dad? How did Dad prevail through all
You
of that?
know, my husband has, like I said, had that a lot of one-on-one with Chris and
Yeah,
teaching and molding. And I say good words. He did give him good advice.
yeah,
Um, my husband knew that this was going to affect me different because I was the mother.
sure, of course.
And, most marriages through something like this are 50, probably more than 50-50.
Huh.
Marriages don't stay together. But my husband was, this is how thoughtful he is. He took me aside and he was just like, your grief is different than my grief. He goes, your grief, because you're the mom, you bore him, that
Hmm.
is going to be different than mine. He he says, my grief, I have to put it in a box and I have to put it away.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of men and women.
Hmm.
Whereas I felt that I raised my children, both my children, I was involved in everything they did. And my husband can attest. He's like, oh gosh, he goes, yeah, you've done way more. If there's anything, it's mom who did it.
Let me ask you
Um,
this. You brought up an interesting point. You said father said, Mr. Moon said he's got to take his grief, put it in a box. Has he taken it out of the box yet?
well, he takes it out every so often. Yeah.
Okay. You have to.
Yeah.
You
You
have to.
have to. Yeah. And again, I think that mentality that he had, honestly, I see Chris with that same mentality,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. But
Wow. So what have you, I know you've been very active post Chris Moon passing away with the wreaths across America. What all have you been doing I know you've done a lot to commemorate not just Chris, but other fallen soldiers. Tell me a little bit about that.
so as we were mourning Chris's death afterwards, and like I said, when you can take a look back and see how God carried you through all this, I really had a passion. And when I met Chris's reconnaissance group, I hadn't met the Charlie Company group yet, but I met the reconnaissance group, could see how damaged these guys were. Like
Hmm.
um they're strong mentally, but again, we all have a heart. And so I felt that it was my job to show them my faith and to show them I'm mourning my son, but I know where my son is. So I really wanted to make sure that I knew that there is a God, there is another place beyond this. My time here on earth is short, but for Chris, it's going to be a blink of an eye. He's going to be back with us.
Hmm.
That's how I see it. So these guys were hurting. Us being Native American and Navajo, Diné. I had a good friend of ours through the family. We were able to do a native ceremony, and
Okay.
so we had our veteran blanket laid out. We had all the guys come. They came to the house, and we did a blessing, and they each got a medicine pouch. And I just said, we need to honor him now, and we need to celebrate him. We
You know,
need to
you're
speak.
it's so hard to do that, and you're so brave to stand up in front of the guys and share that.
Oh,
And most people who, even people who live old into the old years, never really lived the full life. But I think our warriors, those who passed young or passed in combat, they lived the full life. Like they lived and they
yeah.
died doing something that they believed in wholeheartedly. And we're doing that not just for them, but for their guys and troops next to them. And I believe he lived a full life, short, but it was
I
full.
believe so too. I mean, who fulfills their dream and at such a young age, and he did
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
And I think that honestly, when I look back at it now, I'm like, he needed to be there, because now I've lost a son, but I've gained many sons because of
yeah.
him. And the stories, oh gosh, I mean, I could be here forever, Lou, telling you all the things that came back from the stories. Chris was the youngest sniper there. He was the baby.
How old
But
was
I've
Chris when he
got
passed away?
Yeah, and I've gotten letters from guys, or messages, especially one of his other sniper, not his sniper buddy, but he was another sniper there, but he was in charge of Chris and Rush. And he said, I just want you to know, he goes, every time we went on a mission, he would always say, Sarge, let me go, let me go. He goes, you have children. And he was like, that was Chris. And
Mm.
he was like, shut up, Moon, get in the back, you
Yeah,
know, just
yeah,
kind of get in the back.
yeah.
But yeah, I
How
mean,
old, how old was Chris when he passed away?
he was 20 in July, but come August, he would have been 21.
Yeah,
And of course, that was, something we talked about. We were like, when you come home, what do you want to do? We got to celebrate you coming back home. And
yeah,
we've gone to Hawaii, and we've traveled quite a bit with our kids, especially through sports. And he's one thing he said, I laughed so hard. He's like, I want to go to Las Vegas. And to Las Vegas, what do you want to do in Las Vegas? But I did, Lou, that's probably one thing. I mean, even though I know my son probably drank, at high school
yeah,
parties and
yeah.
whatnot, but that was the key moment. Was I wanted to have a drink with my son, to be able to sit with him and have that
Hmm.
drink,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know. and I do that, but yeah, so that I do think about that.
What's the as we wrap up, what is the I guess what if you can speak to Chris, you speak to him with your heart, I understand that, but if you can speak to Chris, what would you say to him?
Oh gosh, I mean, I probably do this a lot in my prayer when I speak to God. I always say, Lord, please give my son a hug and a kiss. I know that he knows that we love him because we just had that relationship with this family. There's no
Mhm.
doubt in my mind that he knows how much we love him, and he knows that he's going to see us again. So I think when I talk to him, I say, gosh, Chris, I hope you can see your sister now, and I hope you can see Samira, because he would have been an amazing father.
Mhm.
He most definitely would have been, because it shows the love that he had for his niece, and he only had that short time with her.
Mhm.
Um, I know he was even talking to the guys, because I hear back, oh yeah, because he was talking about Samira. And then I think that kind of even shifted his change in thinking, saying, I want to be a dad. I can't wait to the day, if I
Yeah.
have kids, I will be teaching them, baseball, and I'll be their
Yeah.
coach and things
Yeah.
like that. So,
What
um,
what are you doing right now? You've done a lot, but what's next for you, Mrs. Moon and Mr. Moon? What's next for you moving forward in terms of commemorating Chris? What's next for you guys?
So my husband just kind of follows. He will follow and support me. He's
Yeah.
not as outspoken as I am. Like I
Mhm.
said, you can kind of tell by putting the box away and putting
Yeah.
it. And my husband works full time, so he's not able to take the time off that I can take. I'm kind of blessed in that situation. But I do Reese Across America. I started that the year after Chris passed. That was something that I thought, wow. I'm not a big fundraiser, and that's a fundraiser, but I love the aspect of remember, honor, and teach, because we do need to teach our younger generations where our freedoms come from. And this is a perfect opportunity for me to do it. And I know Christmas and holidays are so special for families.
Yes.
And of course, I have to go down to the gravesite, because I have to, that's where I have to, I'm Chris. We miss him. We miss all our celebrations. And I thought, once I was there, I was like, Wreath Across America. And it came up through a Gold Star chapter that I was a part of here in Tucson. And I just, I didn't think I was going to fall in love with it, but I fell in love with it because I love it that we're remembering,
Yeah.
we're saying thank you constantly. And plus, we get to speak these veterans' names, because families don't want them to be ever forgotten,
Let me
and I
ask you,
always,
where is Chris buried at?
he's buried at East Long Palm Cemetery, and so he's on the far east side of the cemetery where the headstones are. I know I had that option of putting him in the military section or where the headstones, because I wanted a headstone. I wanted something that, because Tucson knew him as this, athlete out of
Yeah.
Tucson High, and that's where a
Yeah.
lot of his friends know him. So I thought, well, if I can do the headstone and a veteran bench, I think I would kind of get both you know, out of it. And so I know that having that photo collage, you can look at it and see all of Chris's accomplishments, and even his military on there, and then the veteran bench as well.
Let me ask you last question. How do you want your family, your grandchildren, your future grandchildren, how do you want them to remember Chris?
You know what? I know it's been easy because of all the things that I'm involved in with the Reese
Hmm.
Across America. I also have a group here called Hearts of Gold. That's a group of ladies that go around and do special things for our veterans, like bring cookies for the Davis Monthan during the holiday time. We do Thanksgivings on there. I'm also doing Hawaiian shirts for deployed soldiers. So we collect Hawaiian shirts and we ship them off. We host parties for putting those together. I feel that if anybody wants to hear Chris's story, it needs to be shared. He was
Yeah.
special. I mean, there was definitely no doubt about that, especially the ripple effect that he has made,
Yeah.
even on his friends. Like I said, we have the Chris Moon Foundation just starting up.
Is there a website
Um,
for that? Chris Moon Foundation?
it
What is
is chrismoonfoundation.com, I
it?
want to
Okay.
say is what it is. And for his good friends, to want to be able to start that in his honor. And I think at the time I wasn't ready because I was a part of the Gold Star chapter. And then
Yeah.
now that I'm past that, I just finally told the guys, okay, I'm done with that part. I'm ready, if you're ready, to start the Chris Moon Foundation.
Got it.
And so all that, we're just raising funds to go back into scholarship. We're doing scholarships for athletes out of Tucson High.
Okay.
So it could go boy or girl, just athletics in general in Chris's honor. We're also looking for veteran, organizations. Right now we're just starting small because it is just starting, but
Yes.
we've been able to give at least 5 scholarships to 5 students this year.
Wow.
I think it was
Great.
2,000 each, and then another
Great.
500 to another veteran organization. So
That's great.
we're excited to see where Chris Moon is going to be going.
Miss Moon, I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time, and I want to thank you for sharing and opening up to us with your story of your
Yes.
feelings for Chris Moon. And any parting words about Chris you want to share
Yeah.
before we wrap up?
So I know we had talked earlier and I said I've met the reconnaissance group. So I finally met the Charlie Company, and that was a whole nother group of guys. They just finally, these guys had it pretty rough. I mean, if you want, there is obviously a book, uh,
Okay. Yes. The Devil's
The
Playground.
Devil's Playground. Yes.
Okay.
And so it's by Andrew Bragg. He decided at some point, you're talking 10 years later, he just kind of went and had an idea and said, you know what, I need to start grouping these guys back together. I
Mm.
think out of that, they've had one suicide loss. Thank goodness it wasn't more, but the casualties was 50%, and then the loss was high
And this
with
is
that
the
group.
is this that time when Chris was
This
in?
is the time when Chris was there in March,
Oh,
and it's very well written. Yeah, I kid you not. You read it, and from what I kind of compartmentalized with what Chris was telling me where he was, I was able to just it just went together, and I was like,
wow.
wow.
I'm
So
gonna have to.
once I finished it, I was able to finally sit down with his sniper buddy, Rush. And I said, okay, Rush, I'm ready for questions now. And I want to just make sure, because that's why I said I didn't know where Chris was at the beginning of his deployment. I just remember Hellman's province. I remember certain areas, and he was able to just place it in order for me.
Wow.
That's why now I know.
Well, Miss Moon, thank you so much for your time. I'm gonna make sure that
Yes.
I order that book and read that book, and congratulations on raising such an incredible son, right? To both you
Thank you.
and Mr. Moon, and having a wonderful daughter, and you have a grandchild now, at least one, I think, right?
Yes. No, I have three. Yes,
Okay, so
three.
three grandkids, right? And I want to commend you on your strength as well. It takes a
Thank you.
strong woman with in a strong relationship to be able to endure all this and then be the face of Chris Moon for his organization and for his foundation. So thank you so much. Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Yes, thank you
I
for
appreciate
having
it.
me. And
Thank
what I shared is just a sliver. There's so much more.
Wow.
And hopefully, maybe someday, I will finally get that time where I can just write that book too, because
Just do
there's
it.
a lot that happened. But
Start
thank you
writing.
so much for having me, Lou.
You're very
Good
welcome.
seeing you.
Good seeing you too. Wow. So, I had a wonderful conversation with Miss Chris Moon. Um, you got to give it up to these strong mothers out there, man. If it wasn't for strong moms, there wouldn't be strong men out there. So, again, this is Lou Pimber. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you share the story. If you love it, give it a like. Share with your friends and family. I talk to you all very soon.